Hey, Shrek here with Shrek Travel. Today we have an absolute privilege. We've been invited to get a cool tour of the Duluth Depot, and I'm here with Ken, and I'm just going to let him talk for a bit, and he's going to give us that tour. Ken?
Shrek, thank you very much for the opportunity. Welcome everybody to the Lake Superior Railroad Museum here at the St. Louis County Depot in beautiful downtown Duluth, Minnesota. We're going to walk you around, show you some of the things that you can visit and see for yourself when you come to this wonderful building, which dates back to 1892 and was built by the Northern Pacific Railway. Outside is the French Chateau-esque version of architecture, which is very rare. You see references to the fleur-de-lis and other things like that in the architecture of the building. It was designed by Peabody and Stearns and built at the incredible price back in the day of $650,000. And during the peak of its usefulness as a train station in the 1930s, it shared itself with 5 different railroads, 57 trains a day, and over 780,000 passengers a year. It's now an arts, culture, history center and the heart and soul of arts, culture, and history in our entire region, featuring the Duluth Superior Symphony Orchestra, the Minnesota Ballet, Duluth Art Institute, St. Louis County Historical Society, Arrowhead Corral, and of course us here in the Lake Superior Railroad Museum and our working summertime excursion train on the North Shore Scenic Railroad. But Shrek, I know you're going to want to hear this part of the story. It's why we are here. Let's take a look at this. The story of why we are here kind of starts inside this historic car. It's called the car Mesabi. Come with me. The car was built in 1893 by the Fall Creek Car Company of Fall Creek, Ohio, and it belonged to the Merritt family of Duluth, the 7 Iron Men. And it is the story of why we are here. We are here because what the Anishinaabe called Red Earth, and everyone knew it was here. They used it for dyes and for coloring and for facial paint, but it was iron ore. And it was discovered first on the Vermilion Range, and then for Duluth part of the story, it was discovered on the Mesabi Range by the Merritt family of Duluth, who shipped their iron ore on a railroad they built from their mines on the range to docks here in Duluth. And that's the reason we are here. The iron mining that supported 2 world wars. Had it not been for the riches of northeastern Minnesota's vast hematite reserves, World War I and World War II could have gone the other way. This was their private car, their Winnebago, if you will. Now, Shrek, I know you travel around the country in a motorhome. This was the motorhome of the day for the extremely wealthy. Now, the Merritt family unfortunately lost their holdings in what might be a little bit of a swindle, but boy, that's never happened in big business in history before, has it? Take a look at this car. Take a look at the galley. Take a look at the fine craftsmanship, all hand carved. The car was used by the Merritt family for a very short time, and then they lost this, their iron mines and their railroads, to what would become U.S. Steel today. One of the first big billion-dollar corporations ever on the face of the earth, and still very successful to this day, owing it all to what the 7 Iron Men discovered under the earth in northeastern Minnesota. Shrek, the Lake Superior Railroad Museum is the work of volunteers. Since its very inception back in the late 1970s to today, we depend on volunteers not only to do the restoration, to do the maintenance of our equipment that we use on the North Shore Scenic Railroad, but actually run the North Shore Scenic Railroad. Your engineer, your conductor, your fire person, all volunteers to the Lake Superior Railroad Museum to make not only a historical visit here in the museum possible, but also a fun train ride on our 32 miles of track that go from here up the North Shore and through the majestic North Woods to a place called Two Harbors. And coincidentally enough, another historic train depot turned into a museum. So we want to thank our volunteers. They're very important to us. We're very lucky to have them. Volunteers have built this particular museum and maintain it today. Our train passenger count is about 100,000 guest passengers a year, and about 60,000 people come to the museum to see things like this. The William Crooks, the very first steam locomotive in Minnesota, and the very first locomotive of one of Minnesota's greatest rail barons ever, James J. Hill. Let's go up in the cab and I'll tell you that story. The St. Paul and Pacific Railway was the first one in Minnesota. It was incorporated just before the Civil War. This engine, built in 1861, actually came up the Mississippi River on a barge. There were no tracks into Minnesota. And they were going to go from what is now Minneapolis to St. Paul. Minneapolis called St. Anthony Falls back in the day. The railroad failed because it didn't go anywhere. An entrepreneur who was familiar with shipping and had customers in Canada was a Canadian himself, who came to this country because his 7th grade geography teacher told him that all great fortunes are made at the highest navigable point of any great river system. He saw the Mississippi, he traced it to St. Anthony Falls, and that's where he moved and got into the shipping business, because it dawned on him that America had more stuff than Canada. And he figured out a new way to get it there: build a railroad. And he built an empire, and they called him the Empire Builder, James J. Hill. At one time the richest man west of Chicago, a railroad baron based here in Minnesota. He buys the bankrupt railroad and renames it the Great Northern, and this, number 1, the William Crooks, was his favorite engine. He saved it from being cut up at least twice. His son saved it at one time and gave it to his father, completely rebuilt as you see it today, for his 74th birthday. We're very fortunate to have it in the care of the Lake Superior Railroad Museum here in Duluth, Minnesota. And it's one of the things you get to see when you come and see us. One of the things we've done to ensure the safety of our guest visitors is to make sure that the building and everything is cleaned and sanitized on a regular basis. And that goes for the North Shore Scenic Railroad too. All trains are cleaned thoroughly between every single ride. One of the things we've done here in the museum is we've replaced all of our push-button activations to sensory touch instead. So there's no touch. All you do is you just wave your hand right here, and that starts the motion of, be it something on the model train, maybe it's a video. There's over 30 of these in the museum. You never have to touch them, and you can move trains around on the model. You can start videos, but most importantly, you can know that when you come and visit or ride on the North Shore Scenic Railroad, your safety and your health are our most important concerns. Shrek, the Lake Superior Railroad Museum, is open 7 days a week, almost 365 days a year. We're closed on Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving, but for the rest of the time, the museum's open from 10 to 5. The North Shore Scenic Railroad runs excursions of different lengths. We have dinner trains, we have murder mystery trains, we have beer tasting trains, we have the Duluth Zephyr excursion, we have first class, we have coach. All that is explained at a place called DuluthTrains.com. At DuluthTrains.com, you can find out everything about the museum, and you can find everything about our North Shore Scenic Railroad, and we certainly would love to have you be our guest here at the museum and out on the railroad. We started this by saying, why are we here? And it's because of the iron ore. The question then comes up, why are we here? What is it about the Lake Superior Railroad Museum that makes it special? I've got a story for that. We're in what's called an RPO car, Railway Post Office car. This is how the mail was delivered back in the day. It would be picked up along the route in bags, and there would be a crew of about 10 guys in here who would sort the mail while the train was moving. And then at the next stop, they'd take one of these bags that was destined for the community that they were going through and literally toss it out the door. They then would use a hook to pick up another bag that would be hanging from the support that would have the outgoing mail from that city. The train would never stop. And therein lies the story of why we are here. The Lake Superior Railroad Museum is a great place. I love it dearly. I respect all the work of all the many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of volunteers that make this possible. But really, we're kind of just a collection of stuff. Old stuff, metal. Nothing happens in this museum, or in my opinion, any museum, until somebody, in our case, tells somebody else their train story. I came to work one day, and there was a note on my desk from somebody that had visited over the weekend. And it was beautiful penmanship and lengthy. And it started out, we just had to tell somebody this story. We were touring your museum, and we were in that post office car. And my grandmother, who's quite elderly, told us a story. She said something that nobody knew, that our grandfather worked in a car like this, that he was an RPO officer and worked for the U.S. Postal Service sorting mail on trains. She, and we knew this part of the story, was the daughter of a station master in a small town and lived at the train station. One of her jobs every day, winter, spring, summer, fall, was when that train came through and they tossed out the mailbag, she would run out and get it and wait for the post department to come and pick it up to sort the mail for the town. Every day, as that bag was tossed out, there was a young man who would wave at her and smile. And she waved and smiled back. And that happened every single day. She looked forward for the train to come. So she was on the platform when the train went by so she could wave and smile back. One day, the train stopped. The young man got off, introduced himself, and became our grandfather. That part of our history, our family history, would have been lost forever. My grandmother's leaving soon, and she left a piece of us in our memory because of a visit to your museum. And that's why we are here. I invite you to come and tell your train stories at the Lake Superior Railroad Museum at the St. Louis County Depot here in downtown Duluth. Shrek, thanks a lot.
There is just so much to see. Right now I'm on the main floor where you come off the road, and I was so impressed with everything they saw, or everything I saw. I just absolutely loved it. I can't even get the right words to explain how much stuff that was so cool that I didn't get on camera. And then one thing I just want to show you right here is they have a beautiful military memorial that you have to come here and see this for yourself. And you walk in, and I know I've talked about architecture and everything, but look just how beautiful this building is. And if I remember my history correctly, this is one of the first few buildings in Duluth to ever be built. And I believe the first one was the post office, and the other one might have been the Masonic Lodge. So definitely come check this out. If you haven't already, click like on this video, subscribe to my channel, and check out the other videos. I'm Shrek with Shrek Travel, and thank you for watching this video.